Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So we'll do the second class. 1 second. Just hold on. I'm getting a call.
Yeah.
Let's start. Hello. Yeah. Okay. So last class we had started looking at the angular momentum portion, right?
Yeah.
So angular momentum, what we had seen was we had defined it for a particle translating.
Yeah.
And obviously, when we are writing it as R cross P, you have to know what is the R from which you're measuring, right? What is the point
Yeah.
from where you're measuring the R? So you have to write that vector properly and write this vector properly. So you are measuring right now angular momentum about O point, right?
Yeah.
P is momentum vector, so it is MV. So it will be a cross product of two terms. So
Yeah.
that is for a particle. Now for rotating bodies or bodies with basically extension, no longer a particle, then in two different cases we have to learn. One is the pure rotation case, pure rotation about some axis. If that is the case, then basically there is no translation that is happening.
Yeah.
In that case, the angular momentum we derived last class was I omega.
Yeah.
That I is the moment of inertia about the same axis of rotation.
Yes.
Okay, moment of inertia about same axis. So this was coming from this derivation only, but because it's an extended body, you will do that for every particle, right?
Yeah.
You'll do Ri cross Mvi. And you will add up all the angular momentums of each particle in the body, right?
Yeah.
So when you do that, Vi is going to be omega cross Ri. So you will get M Ri cross M will come out. You get omega cross Ri, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that this is a vector triple product. And whenever you have A cross B cross C, you can write it as A dot C B minus A dot B C. And this becomes Ri square omega M in the direction of the omega vector. And omega, this summation becomes I omega.
Yes.
And this becomes 0 because Ri is in the plane of the disk, whereas omega has direction which is perpendicular.
Yeah.
Omega, alpha, all of these are polar vectors. Their directions are perpendicular to the plane or into the plane.
Yeah.
So the second term of the cross product becomes 0, right?
Yes.
So this was L is equal to I omega for pure rotation. Now rotation plus translation case comes at the end of the chapter. So right now we will not worry about that. Okay. We will go on to section 10.10, which is conservation of angular momentum. So what he says is angular momentum of a body is defined as the sum of basically Ri cross Pi for every particle in that body, right?
Yeah.
So if you do a derivative at this stage, dl by dt, rate of change of angular momentum, right? So when you do a derivative of this cross product, you'll have to write two terms. One term when you by product rule, you're differentiating. One term like this and one term like this, right?
Yes.
So dri by dt is just the velocity, right? And now vi cross mvi will be 0, right?
Yeah.
Because you are multiplying a cross a, right? Angle between them is 0. So plus here dpi by dt is force vector, force on the ith particle, right?
Yeah.
So this is Ri cross Fi, which is basically torque, right?
Torque. Yes.
Torque on ith particle, and you have to sum up all the torques, right?
Yeah.
So this becomes torque total. dl by dt becomes equal to torque total, right? Now he will prove later that internal torques, just like you did it earlier, internal torques will add up and cancel each other, right?
Yes.
And the only torque that matters here is external torque.
Yes.
So dl by dt will become equal to torque external only, right?
Yeah.
So that is the crucial principle now, because if suddenly external torques are zero, then what happens is dl by dt is zero, which implies that L is constant,
Constant. Yes.
right?
Huh.
So L is constant will mean angular momentum is fixed for that system.
Huh. Yes.
So you will have to be super careful here, because you have to measure angular momentum only about some axis where you can find zero torque in the whole thing, right?
Hmm.
Like if the same system, you can see multiple points, and some points there might be non-zero torque, okay?
Okay.
So we will see examples of this later on. So there will be the same system, but from one point there is a torque, and from another point there is no torque, right? So
Yeah.
angular momentum can only be conserved about an axis that passes through a point which has no external torque, right?
Okay. Yes.
So we will stress on this later when we do some examples. Right now, let's just move onward. So we have dl by dt is equal to torque external. This is very similar to the dp by dt is equal to force external, right?
Yes. Yeah.
In the previous chapter, we did momentum conservation. Now we are doing angular momentum conservation, right?
Yeah.
So we can write dl is equal to torque external into dt, right? An integral of this will be similar to what we did there. dp is equal to integral f dt, right? This was called linear impulse. Impulse of a force, no? This f dt integral was the impulse of that force, right?
Yes.
So this is angular impulse. So angular impulse will be equal to the change in angular momentum. This will give you delta L, right?
Yeah.
Integral of dl will be Lf minus Li, right? So
Yeah.
delta L will be equal to your angular impulse, and that is what is there in 10.11. Now he talks about kinetic energy of a rotating or for rigid body rotating about a given axis. Pretty straightforward stuff, because as soon as a body starts rotating about an axis, every particle of that body goes in a circle of its own radius. Right?
Yes.
So you have to write the sum of kinetic energies of each particle. So you will have to do half mi vi square. You have to sum this up, right? So this will clearly be half comes out, and summation mi vi is ri square omega I square, right?
Yes.
Correct. So when you do this sum, what will happen is this term will be collected as your I, and it will become half I omega square, where again you have to be careful that your I is about the same axis as the axis of rotation. Don't calculate I about some other point and then say half I omega square, right?
Yeah.
You have to be very sure about which axis it is rotating around. You have to do it around that axis, right?
Yeah.
So for example, people make mistakes in things like this. So there is a hanging rod, let's say, right? And it is rotating like this omega, right?
Okay.
Now everyone knows that rod is ml square by 12 about this middle axis, but it is ml square by 3 about this, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So half I omega square here will use the I which is ml square by 3, not ml square by 12.
Yeah.
Because the rod is not rotating like this, no? It is rotating like this about this, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be sure about these things. Okay.
Yeah.
Then kinetic energy of a rotating body. Right now he has done just kinetic energy of a pure rotating body. Later he will also do kinetic energy of a body which is rotating plus translating. If it is pure rotating, you can just write this, right? But if it is moving at the same time as rotating, then you will have to add some extra terms to that. Okay.
Okay.
For example, the earth is rotating and revolving, right, around the sun.
Yes.
So earth's kinetic energy will not just have a half I omega square about its own poles, but also a half mv square because of the kinetic energy of its translation, right?
Uh-huh.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now the next section is power delivered by the torque. This is very straightforward stuff because everything that you have learned in normal linear motion mechanics has a rotational analog. So if you learned about momentum there, now you have a corresponding angular momentum here. If you learned about torque there, force there, now you have a torque here, right?
Hmm.
So we learned about power there, right? Power is F dot V,
Huh.
right? Because power is basically the rate of doing work, dw by dt, and work is basically d by dt of F dot dr, right?
Hmm. Yes.
So this will become F dot V, right? D by
Yeah.
dt of this will become F dot V.
Absolutely. Huh.
So power is F dot V. So what should be my equation for angular power delivered by some torque? It will be torque dot omega.
My God.
That
Okay.
is the obvious thing, that is equivalent thing for rotation, right?
Yeah.
So torque is this, power is this angular power, and obviously just like P dt gives you total work done, right? Integral of P dt gave you total work here.
Hmm.
But similarly, you can say total work done by angular rotation will be integral of tau dt, right? Torque dt.
Huh.
Same thing basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, oh, I have made a mistake. P dt. No, I have made some error here. FDR, no, here. FDR was. Torque into omega, no. Power was torque into omega, no. What am I doing? Yeah.
Huh.
So torque into omega dt, no.
Huh.
So then omega dt is d theta, right?
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
P dt is correct, but T is torque into omega,
Hmm.
right? So that I had forgotten to write. So omega into dt will be d theta, right? Because omega is d theta by dt.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So now this looks like the exact same work equation in forces, right? FDR.
FDR. Yeah.
So this is the equivalent of that FDR. Okay.
Yeah.
Now he does a few sections on calculation of moment of inertia. So have you gone through this moment of inertia sections?
Yeah, I went through it once.
So are you able to integrate and all to get moment of inertia?
Yeah, I was. For these ones, I could.
So you should know how he does the moment of inertia of hollow sphere, solid sphere, cylinder and all.
Hmm.
Okay. So make sure that you go through it again once if you have any doubts here. Okay.
Okay.
The important things in this portion are parallel axis and perpendicular axis theorem. Parallel axis theorem and perpendicular axis theorem. Now, for parallel axis theorem is pretty straightforward, but sometimes people make mistakes because you can have a tricky question in parallel axis theorem. We'll discuss that. Let's say this is my center of mass, right? And this is an axis passing through center of mass. So for this rod, so ICM is equal to ml square by 12, right? Now any other axis here at a distance of x from the center of mass, right? Your relation tells us that I dash will be equal to ICM plus m into x square.
Yeah.
Where x is the distance between this axis and the center of mass axis, right?
Yeah.
Now, it is important to notice that this relation is valid only if this one is ICM, okay?
Okay.
So what happens sometimes is people have questions like this. This is a rod, this is one axis, this is one axis, right? Find this is I1 and this is I2. What is the relation between I1 and I2, right?
Okay.
So don't do this, that I1 is equal to I2 plus MD square, if this is D.
Okay.
That is wrong. Why? Because you are supposed to use parallel axis theorem only using the center of mass.
Yeah.
So what you are supposed to do here is, let's say this is X. So you'll have I1 is equal to ICM plus MX square. and I2 is equal to ICM plus M into x minus d square. So if you want a relation between this and this, you can subtract and get I1 minus I2 is equal to M into x square minus x minus d whole square, right?
Yeah.
I1 is equal to I2 plus M into not d square, but simply this square, right? So the relation, the real relation between I1 and I2, even though they are parallel, is not like this, right?
Yeah.
Because the relation comes when we talk about the center of mass frame. So parallel axis theorem, you should remember I is equal to ICM plus MD square, and D is the distance from center of mass axis, right?
Yeah.
So don't make this error. This error is very common.
Okay. Yeah.
Then perpendicular axis theorem. Perpendicular axis theorem will try and derive. Parallel axis theorem was too easy, so I've not shown the derivation. You can do it. You can just do the new moment of inertia for that axis from scratch, right? And then connect it to the moment of inertia from the center of mass.
Center of mass, yeah.
So parallel axis theorem, that's why I didn't show it, because it's obvious how to prove it also. Okay.
Okay.
So for perpendicular axis theorem, it is not obvious. So what we will do actually is use this one. Let's say there is a rectangle. Okay. Rectangle, length A, side length B. A and B are the sides. Okay. And there are three axes that I want to worry about. This axis is the y-axis, and this axis is the x-axis. Okay.
Okay.
And there is a z-axis. Okay.
Okay.
This is my z-axis. So there is an iz, there is an iy, and there is an ix, right?
Yeah.
You can define moment of inertia as about all those three lines, right? Okay. Now, let's say total mass is m and mass per unit length and all, you know what to do. It is going to be mass per unit area is m by AP. Let's find out first what is iy, what is ix, right? Okay. So iy, for iy, this derivation was probably there in the book. I'm not sure if it was there or not, but I think it might have been there, or it will be in the exercise. It is there in the book. Okay.
Okay.
It is in section 10.14. There is a B section on page 176B.
Yeah.
So he takes, if I have to do iy, I will take a line parallel to y, right? Like this. And I will vary this line over the entire thing. I'll vary this line over this entire portion, right?
Yes.
So notice that this line is at an equal distance of x from the from this axis, right? Every point on the line is at the same distance x, no? So your moment of inertia here for this line will be di will be equal to r square dm or x square dm, because each point or each dm is at the same x, no?
Yes.
So integral of x square dm we have to do, right? And we have to vary our x from minus a by 2 to plus a by 2, right?
Yes.
And let's write our dm. Dm will be basically m by ab into what is the length of this line b?
B.
What is the thickness dx, right?
Okay.
You understand? It is in this direction, this much thickness, right? So area will be b into dx, right?
Yeah.
So dm is m by a dx. So you'll get x square m by a dx from minus a by 2 to a by 2, right?
Yeah.
So m by a comes out and becomes x cubed by 3. And again, now I have to put minus a by 2 to a by 2, right? So a cubed by 24 plus a cubed by 24 will happen. So it will become m by a into a cubed by 12, right?
Yeah.
So finally, it will come out to be ma square by 12,
Yes.
right? So iy comes out as ma square by 12. Ix will similarly come out as mb square by 12.
Yeah.
So these are the two moment of inertias for lines that are in the plane of the body, right?
Yeah.
In the plane, both of them are in the plane of the body, right?
Yeah.
Now let's try to calculate our moment of inertia for Iz. Okay.
Okay.
So I will just rub off this stuff. And I have Iz now. Iz is a totally different axis because it is not in the plane. No, it is perpendicular.
Yeah.
Right? So I have to find Iz. So what? So think about it. It is really hard to construct a proper small unit mass, right? Like for Ix and Iy, it was easy to get a line which is symmetrical and keep varying, right?
Yeah.
For Iz, what will you take as a small element, right? That is the problem right now. You understand what I'm saying? You are not able to take any nice symmetrical element, no, because this is at the center of the rectangle. There is nothing very special about the rectangle in terms of symmetry.
Yeah.
Right? How will I vary it, right? What I will do is I will take a small element which is a square element, okay,
Okay.
or a rectangular element and all. It is at what position? This was my origin. So let's say it is at X here and Y here, right?
Okay.
This point is X comma Y, okay? So
Okay.
its thickness in this is dx and its height here is dy, right?
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah.
So basically the area of that element will be dx dy, right?
Yeah.
Area will be dx dy because it is going from x to x plus dx like this
Yes.
and y to y plus dy like that.
Yeah.
So that is my small element. Now that small element is at a distance of r, right, from the center, right? So di for that small element will be, this is my axis Iz, right? So I have to take distance to the origin, right?
Yeah.
So r square will be simply x square plus y square, no? And dm I have to write like this, right? Now think about it. My dm is basically m by ab into dx dy, right?
Yeah.
Right? So I'll just write that x square plus y square m by ab dx dy, right? Now the variation that you have to do is vary both x and y, no?
Yeah.
You have to vary both x and y to be able to cover all such mass elements, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So it's not a single integral, it's a double integral. Okay.
Okay.
It's double integral dx dy, right? Both have to change, right?
Yeah.
And x changes from where to where? Minus a by 2 to a by 2, and y changes from minus b by 2 to b by 2, right?
Yeah.
Now, the way we will evaluate this integral is by thinking of first fixing your x and changing only the y, or vice versa. Okay.
Okay.
So let's just put your y part here. This is your y variation, and I'm going to integrate only the x part. Okay. So basically what I mean to say is keep your y fixed and integrate along this row, no? Keep changing your x, but don't change your y, right?
Okay.
Right? So x square plus y square into dx, this is my initial integral, and outside I have to do dy also.
Yeah.
So here y square will be assumed as a constant, right? Because y is fixed here. So I will get x cube by 3 plus y square x, right?
Yeah.
And put the values now a by 2 minus a by 2, right? So it will become a cube by 24 minus so plus a cube by 24. So it will become a cube by 12, a cube by 12 plus y square into a by 2 minus a by 2. So a, right?
Yeah.
So that is coming out after that integral, right? And then there is a dy there, right? And this goes from minus b by 2 to b by 2, right?
Yeah.
So it will be a cube by 12 into y plus y cube by 3 into a, right?
Yeah.
And you have to vary it from minus b by 2 to b by 2, right? So this term will become a cube by 12 into b, and this term will become a by a into, this will become again b cube by 12, right?
Yeah.
Right? Now see that you are getting final answer m by ab into a cube b by 12 plus a b cube by 12, right? AB cancels and it becomes A square plus B square.
Yeah.
So you are getting IZ as what? M by 12 A square plus B square,
Huh.
which is IX plus IY,
Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
which is what we have to prove for perpendicular axis theorem, right?
Yeah.
So perpendicular axis theorem, this will only work if it was a planar body, right?
Huh.
My variation right now was only in that plane. No, I did a dx dy, right?
Uh-huh.
If it was it had thickness and all, I will have to vary dz also.
That also. Yeah.
That will be too difficult.
Mhm.
So what are the restrictions on perpendicular axis theorem? Perpendicular axis theorem works only when
Same
only
thing.
on same plane, only on planar bodies, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And second thing was the x and y axis we had assumed to be at 90 degree to each other, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So two axes must be perpendicular to each other, correct?
Hmm.
And the third axis passed through the point of intersection of these two, right?
Yeah.
Third axis was through the point of intersection of the other two, point of intersection of those above two axes, right?
Hmm.
Then you can apply and then you can say that Iz is equal to Ix plus Iy, right?
Yeah.
Now this theorem is useful in situations like this if there is a disk and you have to find momentum of inertia about a line which is a diametric line,
Hmm.
right? Now diametric line, it is not easy to construct elements in this, okay?
Yeah.
You cannot make nice elements and be able to integrate easily,
Uh-huh.
right? But what you can say is by symmetry, this diametric line and this diametric line should have same moment of inertia, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no difference between these two diameters.
Hmm.
So take any two perpendicular diameters. So you should have I here, right?
Hmm.
So this axis should be 2I, right?
Yeah.
And this axis is very easy to calculate
Huh.
because there is circular symmetry for this line, no?
Yeah.
You can take elements like this, no.
Uh-huh.
So that axis, when you calculate, it comes out to be half mr
square.
square.
Yeah.
Not mr square, half mr square if it was a disk.
Huh.
If it was
No,
a
if
ring,
m square by 2.
correct. Mr square by 2, it will come out for this axis.
Hmm.
So this I will become mr square by 4.
Yeah.
So basically, you are using your perpendicular axis theorem indirectly, and you are only imagining two perpendicular lines, right?
Hmm.
Which are diametric. And that will help you basically get the I through the center of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was that. Now we come to the slightly more advanced portions of the chapter, which is about combined rotation plus translation.
Hmm.
Combined rotation plus translation. So here, the basic principle that he explains here in 10.16 section, right? 10.16 section, you should read through, and it is fairly straightforward that if you have an arbitrary body that is doing multiple kinds of motion, right?
Hmm.
So it has a center of mass. It could be moving with an acceleration of center of mass, right?
Yeah.
So all the physics that you learned earlier is still valid, obviously.
Hmm.
And basically you can write acceleration of center of mass is sum of external forces divided by mass, right? Total mass. Correct?
Hmm.
We learned this in the previous chapter, right? Sum of
Yeah.
external forces is equal to m into ACM, right?
Yes.
So that is obviously still valid. So that is your first defining equation for its motion. The second thing is, if you want to measure the rotational effects of this body, right?
Hmm.
So what you can take is all the external torques of this body about its center of mass, right?
Hmm.
Take all the external torques of the body on the body about its center of mass. That should still be equal to I center of mass into sigma center of alpha center of mass, right? Now here it is important to notice that everywhere I have written Cm, and in the book also he has written Cm. Okay. So
Okay.
because you could have been rotating about any point, right?
Hmm.
But in general, you will not get torque torque is equal to I alpha, which will be valid about any point. It is always valid about center of mass.
Okay.
Torque external Cm will always be ICM into alpha, right?
Okay.
But in general, it might not be true for any other point, because you might have to consider pseudo forces and stuff like that. Complications will arise if it's an accelerated body. Okay.
Okay.
Always take it about center of mass. So take the torque, take the I about center of mass and find its rotational motion. Okay.
Okay.
So these two relations are going to be the key things that we will be using most of the time. So understand these two very well. Like when you apply it to problems, it will be clear when we are referring to which axis and so on. Right?
Okay.
Apart from these two, what else can we use to understand this? We'll be using angular momentum conservation, right? So most of the time when you will see the exercises, you'll realize that there are two ways to do the problem. There will be a force method to do the problem, and then there is an angular momentum method. By force method, I mean this method, torques and forces, right?
Okay.
And there will also be an angular momentum plus energy method, momentum and energy conservation method. Most of the times, this method will be faster.
Okay.
So we need to learn how to write the angular momentum of these bodies, right? Rotating plus translating. But before we do that, we'll discuss a little bit of rolling. So what is the meaning of rolling motion? So rolling, everyone seems to be confused about this, but what it means is fairly simple. What you have to understand in rolling motion is the motion of the point of contact here. This motion with respect to the surface. With respect to surface. So if you think about it, if this has a velocity VCM and is rotating like this, right?
Yeah.
There are 3 points on the body. Let's look at this point, let's look at this point, let's look at this point, right? There are actually many more points, but we are looking at these 3 right now.
Yeah.
So velocity of this point is simply VCM, because there is no rotational effect on the center itself, right? But velocity of this point is VCM plus omega into r, right?
Yeah.
Because when you suppose it was a pure translating situation, no, there are no rotations at that time, then every particle on the body acquires VCM anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that is still there, but now there is a rotation also, right? So it will be added there.
Yeah.
This velocity will be VCM minus omega r, depending on whether this is bigger or this is bigger, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That decides whether the arrow is this side or this side. Right?
Yeah.
Correct. So now, if there is a body like this, then we know that the lowermost point's velocity is actually v vector minus omega r, right? V vector minus omega r for this lowermost point. If that is equal to 0, it is called pure rolling.
Okay.
If that is equal to 0 on a fixed surface, right? Basically, what the meaning is that it should the resultant velocity of this point, right? V resultant should be 0 with respect to ground.
Okay.
With respect to ground, it should not be moving. Then you will say it is pure rolling, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So resultant velocity here was V minus omega r, and ground we are assuming is 0 here. If the ground itself is moving, resultant velocity should be equal to velocity of the ground, right? For pure rolling. Okay. So it is very straightforward. That's all that you need to know about pure rolling, in the sense that the lowermost point should not have relative motion with the surface.
Okay.
If it has relative motion with the surface, it is not pure rolling. So how do you decide relative motion with the surface? You need to find the absolute velocity of the lowermost point, which is VCM minus omega r, right?
Yeah.
And then check the velocity of the lowermost surface, right? Which is VG or something. It could be 0 in most cases, right? So in most cases, you will have the relation VCM is equal to omega r for rolling, but not always, right?
Yeah.
If suppose you are on an escalator or something, or a inclined plane or something, the floor is moving, let's say, right? Then VCM is equal to omega r is not valid for pure rolling. Because
Yeah.
if you move at that speed, you will be moving with respect to the surface, no? Because you are stationary with respect to an imaginary ground which was at rest. But
Yeah.
actually ground is moving, right? So that is not pure rolling.
Okay.
Now, what is, if not pure rolling, then what happens? Suppose VCM minus omega r is not equal to 0, and we are assuming again ground is not moving, right? If ground is not moving, then this means that not pure rolling, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
If not pure rolling, there are two cases. One case is this, it could be greater, and one case is this, it could be lesser, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Now, when it is greater than 0, that means the point at the bottom has a forward velocity, right?
Yeah.
With respect to ground. So therefore, it is called forward slipping. It is called rolling with forward slipping. And if it has a VCM minus omega r is less than 0, it has a point on the bottom has a backward velocity. So it is called backward slipping. Okay.
Okay.
Examples of this are, like if you're going in a car very fast and something comes on the road, right? Then immediately you will press the brakes hard, which will basically stop rotation of the wheel. Okay.
Okay.
It stops rotation of the wheel immediately, but the car has acquired so much velocity, so it will keep skidding, right? So think about the velocity of the lowermost point, right?
Yeah.
Lowermost point of the tire, right? It has still got VCM because that cannot be stopped instantly. Omega is very low now. It's not rotating much, right? So this omega r is not much. So body has lowermost point has a velocity of VCM minus omega r, right?
Yeah.
Which is forward in nature. This must be greater than 0 then.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So it is forward in nature. So then you are saying that the car is skidding or slipping forward. Right? Because car is going on moving while you are trying to stop it, right?
Right.
And because the velocity is forward in nature, friction will act in the backward direction of the car now. Right? Kinetic friction will act now. So that kinetic friction is going to bring you to rest eventually, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because there was relative motion right now between the surface and the tire, right? If your VCM minus omega r was equal to 0, then you are at rest with respect to the surface, and therefore no kinetic energy will act. Right?
Yeah.
So this is an example when the car skids while trying to brake. It is not able to reduce its VCM fast enough. So it starts skidding with forward slipping, right?
Okay.
The
Yeah.
other example could be if your car tire is stuck in mud or something, right? Then what happens is you are pressing the accelerator, but the car is not moving ahead, although the wheels are spinning really fast, right? You understand? No? You would have seen such a case.
Yeah.
So this will be really high, but this is not happening. Okay.
Okay.
You understand? You are spinning in place, right?
Yeah.
What happens in that case is VCM minus omega r is less than 0.
Okay.
So that is called backward slipping, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So these couple of things you need to understand. And all of these cases, like this is not a hard and fast rule that VCM has to be equal to omega r. Keep in mind that it depends on whether the surface is moving or not, right?
Okay. Yeah.
If there's a floor itself is moving, you also have to be moving at the same pace, right? The bottommost point should always have the same velocity as the point that is in contact with it on the floor.
Okay. Fine.
For pure rolling. And if there is not the same velocity, it is called slipping condition.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And obviously, if your rotation was like this and VCM was like this, you just adjust the final velocity differently, right? This velocity will become VCM plus omega r, and the top one will become VCM minus omega r. Right?
Yeah.
So all that is obvious, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
So now there is this part called 10.18. 10.18, which is kinetic energy of a body in combined rotation and translation, right? That is very important. What he has done is very nice, and he has shown it properly also. So think of a body like this, and there is an origin like this, right? And this is origin, and this is center of mass, okay? And the body is moving with some VCM with respect to center of mass, and it also spinning about the center of mass, right?
Yeah.
It is also spinning about the center of mass with omega, right? Now you want to find the kinetic energy of this body, right?
Yeah.
This is the complicated case, rotation plus translation, right? Now, how do you do that? So technically, kinetic energy is still the same thing. It is summation of half mi vi square, right?
Yeah.
Or basically, that is half mi vi dot vi, right? Vi dot vi gives vi square, right?
Yeah.
So basically, you have to track the ith particle, find its velocity, and do the vi dot vi thing, and do it for all such particles, right?
Yeah.
So how do we do it? What we do here is we write the vi vector in terms of the VCM and this vector, right?
Yeah.
So think about it. You can say that the Ri vector is this, right? This is my Ri vector. And this is my RCM vector, no? This one.
Yeah.
And this is position with respect to the center of mass, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So if you write, let's say this is called R I comma CM, right? Right. So we have Ri is equal to RCM plus Ri comma with respect to center of mass, right?
Yeah.
So if you differentiate this, you'll get Vi is equal to VCM plus d by dt of Ri comma Cm, right? Correct.
Yeah.
So Ri comma Cm now will become the Vi comma Cm, right? We should have written it like this: VCM plus Vi comma Cm, right?
Yeah.
So think about what this means. This means velocity of the ith particle with respect to the center of mass, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So whenever you do velocity of some particle with respect to center of mass, technically you are assuming center of mass to be at rest, right? Basically, you calculate the difference between you and the center of mass, right?
Yeah.
So that will basically mean just the rotation part, right? You understand?
Yeah.
Because you are assuming center of mass to be at rest here, right? So
Yeah.
rotation part will be just if omega was angular velocity with respect to center of mass, right? Then it will be omega cross Ri comma Cm, na?
Yeah.
This part. You understand?
Yeah.
So Vi technically is equal to VCM plus omega cross Ri comma Cm, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Now you do Vi dot Vi, right? Vi dot Vi, dot product of these two vectors, right? That will become VCM dot VCM, VCM square plus there will be 4 terms basically, right? That is what he is showing you there. So in the 10.18 section, he's showing you those 4 terms. So now let's not worry about the figure that I have drawn and the notation that I have written. Let's focus our attention on the book once. You have the book, right?
Yeah.
So let's read from there. So he's saying the center of mass itself is moving in the lab frame at a velocity v0. He is calling VCM as v0. Okay.
Yeah.
Velocity of the particle of mass mi is Vi comma Cm with respect to the center of mass frame, right? Correct? And Vi with respect to the lab frame is our origin, okay?
Yeah.
So he's saying the same equation that we wrote. Vi is equal to V0 plus Vi comma Cm, right?
Yeah.
Now kinetic energy is dot product of this with itself, right? This velocity vector. So right now he's trying to track the kinetic energy of the ith particle, right?
Yeah.
So that will be half mi Vi dot Vi, right?
Yeah.
And see how he is doing the Vi dot Vi part. So he has collected that first term VICM square, then V naught square is also there, and then there are two terms which are VI dot CM dot V naught, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
So summing over all the particles, the total kinetic energy will be summation of the VICM square terms plus summation of the V naught square terms plus summation of this last term, right?
Yeah.
Right, and that half and the 2 has been cancelled there, the last one, right?
Yeah.
So the second term there, mi v naught square, right? That will just be half capital M VCM square, no?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So that is obvious. That is half capital M V naught square, right?
Yeah.
The first term, think about it. The first term is the kinetic energy of the body in the center of mass frame, right? Now, in center of mass frame, the body is doing pure rotation, right?
Yeah.
So that will just be half ICM omega square.
Yeah.
You understand? Vi dot comma CM is motion in the center of mass frame.
Mass frame. Yeah.
So that is pure rotation. So that is half ICM omega square.
Yeah.
So first two terms are giving you half ICM omega square plus half MV naught square.
Yeah.
And now look at the third term, right? The third term is the velocity of the center of mass in the center of mass frame. Why? Because notice what this is, summation of, let's look at the summation here clearly. Summation of mi vi comma cm, right? This term, right? So now vi comma cm is technically vi minus vcm, right?
Yeah.
Right? So we can write it as mi vi minus vcm, right?
Okay.
So this becomes summation of mi vi minus summation of mi vcm, right?
Yeah.
And summation of mi vi from the previous chapter, what do you know? It is capital M into vcm. And what is this?
Okay.
Because this is constant, this is capital M, right?
Huh.
You understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this becomes 0, no? This third term.
Okay.
The third term becomes 0. So your kinetic energy of the total rotating plus translating body is a very nice formula. The formula is very simple. You write half capital M VCM square as if the body was concentrated at the center of mass, right?
Okay.
And moving with velocity VCM. So forget about rotation part. Think of it as a point particle moving with VCM, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then add the term which you have forgotten about, right? So then think about it as in the center of mass frame, it is a pure rotation about center of mass, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So one rotation term which is in CM frame and one normal as if it is moving like a point particle, right?
Okay. Fine.
So those two terms you have to combine. So if you keep in mind that it has a translation part and it has a rotation part. Rotation part has to be in CM frame, right? Then you will get it right most of the time. Okay.
Okay.
And now we have one or two things to discuss basically, just the 10.19 and 10.20. I want you to read it and try to understand this. Okay. And this is exactly the same thing that happened in 18. Okay.
Okay.
Just like he did kinetic energy, now he'll do angular momentum in the rotating plus translating case, right?
Okay. Yeah.
He's writing RI, the same way as we did just now, right? And see the whole thing and try to see if you can get it yourself, right?
Okay.
10.19 and 10.20 you should read, and then you should try the exercises if you have not already started. You should try the exercises till question number 45.
45.
Till question 45. 45 is a rotation problem with that rod one. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
45 onwards, we will have to discuss in class carefully. Okay.
Okay.
I want you to try till 45. I'm sure you will get 70-80% right, 80-90% right. So see if you are getting 80-90% till 45. Because 45 onwards is quite serious stuff. So you have to do it in class.
Okay.
So just read the last couple of sections and we will continue with this point on Monday or next week when we start the classes.
Okay.
Okay.
I had one doubt in the rolling part.
Uh,
So if there's a sphere on like an inclined plane,
mm,
so for pure rolling, the velocity of the sphere of the bottommost point should be
same
equal
as
to the
zero.
same as?
Zero.
No, if the plane is also moving with some
If
velocity.
the plane is moving, then it should be equal to whatever is the velocity of the
Component.
plane.
Okay, fine.
So if the plane is going this side or something, right?
Huh.
Then there is a component of velocity of this point, right?
Huh.
This velocity v has a component like this, right?
Hmm.
Right. So just
Yeah.
calculate that component. So your bottommost point should
Huh.
have the same velocity
Okay, fine.
as that component. So
Okay.
ultimately, it's about seeing whether that bottommost point is feeling like it is at rest with respect to the surface or not.
Okay, okay,
If it
fine.
is at rest with respect to the surface, then it is pure rolling.
Pure rolling.
Otherwise,
Okay.
not. And in pure rolling, there is no friction that can act. If it is doing pure rolling, then because
Huh.
relative velocity is zero, so no
Zero.
kinetic friction can happen,
Okay, fine.
right?
Huh.
So you will, when you do more questions, you will get the idea. So it's fine.
Okay.
Just try till 45 and
Hmm.
read the last two sections. We'll continue from this point.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
I'll send the recording to you shortly.
Okay, sure.